So if we can turn the music off, I think we want to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariana Amatulo, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to this second LEAP Lunchtime talk that is made possible by the Art-Centered Dialogue series that we're really privileged to relaunch in many ways through LEAP, and that is made possible by Toyota. So my job, very briefly now, is to introduce the moderator of this panel, Redesigning the New Social Economy, Lee Davis, who is on our LEAP Brain Trust. And I want to say a couple of words about Lee. I met Lee at the Winterhouse Institute about 3 or 4 years ago. And the first thing he said to me was, "You're this crazy person I keep hearing about that does all this work in social innovation." I always remember that. Lee is truly someone that has a bit of a renaissance trajectory and pathways in design. He started as a designer, and as he mentioned to some of us yesterday, he quickly realized that his undergraduate degree in design was not going to allow him to answer some of the questions he was curious to exploring. So he went to Johns Hopkins and got himself a MA in policy studies and went forward doing very, very interesting work beyond the work he was feeling very constrained doing only as a communication designer. And some of that formidable work he did was to be at the helm of a new organization that he started called NEST. For those of you in the audience that do not know NEST, it is an organization that has had a very significant impact worldwide, really setting up new models for social enterprise. And I've seen some of that work in action. I was privileged to be invited last year to one of the most beautiful mega conferences I've attended with karaoke in Rio, music and opera, and very serious discussions around social enterprise in this emergent, exciting market of Brazil. And that was something that Lee put together single-handedly with an amazing group of people. These days, he is back in design education. He's, of course, a fellow with the Yale School of Management, and he holds many appointments in many boards, and he forbidden me to go on and on. So what I would say is he's back in design education. He's at MICA. There are several folks from MICA here at LEAP, and I'm really very excited that he's here and he's put this really amazing panel together. He'll tell you more. Enjoy this session. Thank you.
Wow. Okay. I don't know who she was talking about, but so I'm very excited about this because obviously, as Mariana said, this topic is very close, near to dear to my heart. And what I realized is that in every session that I've been in over the last day and a half, this topic of finance and funding and how do we sustain and how do we think about entrepreneurial strategies for our work has come up again and again, and the concept of the design entrepreneur, this new sort of generation of entrepreneur. So I think you'll find the panelists that we've brought together will really be able to address this from some pretty unique perspectives. So we have on the panel some amazing leaders in this field that can approach this topic from the point of view of a foundation, from the point of view of a for-profit venture fund, a nonprofit venture fund, and a design entrepreneur himself. So I'm not going to introduce them in great length because they're each going to give you sort of a 5-minute inspirational intro to themselves and their work and their sort of pathways. But I just want to quickly let you know who we have with us. So from your left, We have David, who is the Vice President of the Western Region of the Nonprofit Finance Fund, and NFF has been a real pioneer in innovative financing for mission-driven organizations in the US and around the world. We have Tara, next to David, who's the president of the Goldhirsh Foundation, which is an innovative foundation here in LA that supports bright and emerging innovators and gives them the tools to support their success. Next to Tara, we have Kanyi, who is a venture partner with the Collaborative Fund, which is an innovative investment fund based in the Bay Area, focused on shifting from an ownership-based economy to a sharing-based economy. And then last but not least, one of your Art Center's own design entrepreneurs, Gabriel, co-founder and CTO of Conscious Commuter Corporation. I'm going to let him talk about this more. Who's focused on changing vehicles, mobility systems, and urban space, and empowering commuters to diversify the way they get around. So what we're going to do, each of them is going to give sort of a quick 5-minute overview and introduction to their work. Then I'm going to kick it off with a couple of sort of broader questions, and then I'm going to really try to speed through. We're a little bit late. I don't know if I'm going to get to buy any more time or if I still have to end at 2 o'clock, but like, can we go till 2:15? Okay, so, because I want to leave some time for all of you to ask a lot of the burning questions that have come up over the last couple of days. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to David.
All right. Well, first thing you should know about me is I'm a history and political science major. So you got a history major talking to designers about nonprofit finance. So this should be fun. So actually, I'm going to grab a handheld here. So we need to wait 20 seconds, apparently. So one of the things, I'm not going to talk a lot about Nonprofit Finance Fund directly because, you can go to our website and visit all that. NFF is a national nonprofit organization. We do lending, financial consulting to nonprofits and funders, and we also work with investors who are looking to invest into mission-driven organizations. What I really want to focus my remarks on here in my 5 minutes is really the fundamental problem that we at NFF is seeing in the sector, and particularly have a discussion around how designers can play a role in this space. So one of the first things I usually start off a lot of my presentations with is this idea of why do nonprofit organizations even exist, all right? Well, they exist because of what happens, what we call a market failure. That means for-profit corporations actually can't make money doing this stuff. We have customers, let's say the homeless. We have people who provide products and services to those customers. But there's no means to conduct an economics transaction. If the homeless could pay the fully loaded cost for a room every night, they'd be staying in hotels and apartments, not shelters. But they can't do that. So for-profits can't make money providing those services. So they pull out of that space. Nonprofits then have to step into that space. But how they are able to provide products and services is by going to third-party donors and getting money from those donors. And so we can provide our products and services at a reduced rate or free to our end customers. So that subsidy that is a fundamental part of the nonprofit business model. You cannot address a market failure without subsidy. And so, but consequently, because we're so dependent upon those third-party donors and that subsidy business as a nonprofit, it comes with a whole set of rules and restrictions and constraints that make doing our work extremely difficult. And so now we're trying to think of how we can move and become more efficient, more effective, greater impact out there in the space. So, oops, sorry, I got to point it over here. There we go. Back it up. All right, there we go. Woo, my God, you can tell. That's what happens when you let us history majors in here. So what happens, right? We get funding that doesn't cover the full cost of the program delivery. We get funding that's overly restricted, funding that's focused on inputs, not outcomes. And all of these things, what often causes within a nonprofit organization is a weakened infrastructure, limited liquidity. Most nonprofits in the state of California, 56% of them are operating with 90 days of cash or less. 25% of them have 30 days of cash or less. Compare that to Apple that has like 17 years of cash on hand, right? And so what happens is we have the weakened infrastructure. We don't have the staff, the capacity. We have executive directors who are staffing the front desk because the receptionist can only work 3 days a week. And all of these other things going on. And then what happens is this leads to distraction, fragmentation, chasing money to try and just keep cash in, to make sure we can make payroll, all of these things, right? And so then we get more funding that doesn't cover our costs. And we're losing $1 on every widget we make, and we keep trying to make more widgets. And then that gets us to my doom loop, right? Woo, yay, it worked. So, do it again, yay! So what are we seeing? What are we seeing here in Los Angeles? In the City of Angels, what are we seeing? We did a survey of nonprofits here, and we're looking particularly at safety net organizations, critical need, health and human service groups, homeless shelters, food pantries, all that good stuff, drug and alcohol treatment centers. Every year for the past 4 years, these organizations have seen increases in demand. 85, 90% of nonprofit organizations here in Los Angeles are seeing increases in the demand for their services. However, when we said, well, what is your ability to meet that demand and to apply these services? What we see there is that while they were holding steady, they've plummeted in the last 3 years. 37% of nonprofits in Los Angeles say they can actually meet that demand. What does that mean? Each year, more and more people are going unserved. Each year, more and more people are being denied access to services. So, if we want our community to be healthy, vibrant, just places to live, what do we need to do? Well, one of the things is we often say, well, what about philanthropy? What about foundations, right? They should give more. But the reality is, if we look at the size of the cuts we're seeing, particularly just from the federal government, and we have up here the federal government budget cuts due to the sequester, right? And this is just 2013 alone, and we're looking at 4 departments. We're looking at Health and Human Services, Department of Education, Department of Labor, and Social Security Administration, just 4 federal departments. $62 billion in cuts in 2013 alone. All of foundation giving in the United States in 2012 only equaled just about $46 billion. So there's no way that private philanthropy and foundations are going to be able to offset the cuts that we're seeing from the federal government, much less what we're seeing from the state, the county, the city governments as well. So if it's not a question of just giving more, because there's just not enough money in the pie, what's our solution, right? We got to make a bigger pie. So if we look at the nonprofit sector here in the United States, $1.4 trillion in revenue. The vast majority of that is actually earned. But that's the size of the nonprofit sector in the United States. However, you compare that to the US capital markets, that's the private capital market sector here in the United States. $58 trillion. Then let's compare that to the global social capital markets, $212 trillion. So our challenge here is that if we can't figure out a way to drive efficiencies within the system, within that tiny little green wedge of the pie over there, then we need to be able, how can we access and tap into those other wedges? How can we tap into and access that global and US capital markets? And I think that is really one of the things where I think designers, and bringing the design systems, the design thinking approach, design processes, to a system that is extremely constrained, extremely restrictive, and yet how can we then think of new ways, new processes, new systems that are going to allow these health and human service organizations to access this money? And the good news, if there is, we don't have to access a lot of that, right? You give me 1/10 of 1%, I'll double the size of that green wedge right there. So we can siphon off just a little bit of money from those other pieces of the pie. And that's what a lot of this social impact investing, social impact bonds, pay for success work is all designed around. How do we track that money to the green wedge? And I think very much, as we can talk about later, I think designers can play a real integral part in how we can do that for our sector. All right.
Can you hear me now? Good. I don't think I want to use my presentation, but in fact, no, I don't want to use my presentation. I'm the for-profit venture capitalist. I invest in startups, and I have 4 to 10 years to at least triple my money if I want to be in business. I think of myself as a social entrepreneur and as a social innovator, and I think of myself as somebody who wants to be a successful venture capitalist. And so I think I have a design challenge in front of me, and I am not a designer. And the design challenge that I'm trying to think through is how can we create venture returns while also creating social impact? Because my capital markets share of the pie is pretty big. It's pretty huge. But the only way that it works is if I'm at least tripling my money pretty quickly. And the idea that I'd like to propose over my 5 minutes is, I guess, a provocation, which is a starting point for us at Collaborative Fund. Collaborative Fund is a seed fund for creative entrepreneurs who want to change the world, and we invest in technology companies. Most people, when they think of technology, think of the Matrix, they think of computers, they think of software, they think of hardware, and that's where I want to start with a new assumption. The definition of technology that I often hear is applied science, or using the scientific method to solve a problem. But I think technology predates science and predates the scientific method. The wheel was technology. That solved a problem radically well. Writing was technology. That solved a problem radically well. The printing press is technology. And so when we think about the fact that we have software and we have hardware, I don't think of that as necessarily technology or intrinsically technology. I think of that as necessarily software and hardware, intrinsically software and hardware. And what I think about as technology is a tool that radically solves problems, like the wheel, like writing. And that sounds very much like what I understand designers to do best, is to have optimism around radical problem solving. And so in Collaborative Fund, we've actually put the primacy of design entrepreneurs top of the list, because a design entrepreneur tends to be the one who has the most optimism around solving big and hairy problems. And as this world has gotten more complicated, as it's gotten more crowded, as there are more people, the problems have gotten a lot more complex. We have an intractable health insurance. We have a fundamental underclass, which seems to persistently not be going away. We have issues of an agricultural system which some argue is fundamentally broken. We have a planet we're not taking care of. These are really hard problems, and they require a lot of optimism and a lot of technology in my mind. And so when I say that I'm a technology venture capitalist for profit, I actually think of myself as a social impact investor in perhaps a different sense. And I think that that's the beginning of how this design challenge can be resolved, is to invest in social impact businesses, because those are the ones solving the biggest problems. And in doing so through technology, they're the ones that can create that 3x minimum in 4 to 10 years. And we've seen some really, really exciting companies come through Collaborative Fund, and we've been able to create a portfolio of them, a lot of which use this theory of collaboration, which I think is an extremely powerful one. So in the 20th century, commerce was organized fundamentally around the firm. The firm was the most efficient way to meet supply and demand. The firm is no longer necessarily the most efficient way to meet supply and demand, because we've got the internet. If I've got supply and you've got demand, boom, let's go, you know. And the communication costs are asymptoting to zero, to use a slightly wonky economic phrase. And so what that means is that we've got collaborative networks as what I think of as the really, really, really wonderful veins that are coursing through the body of commerce. And what we have an opportunity to do is use that collaborative model to create new experiences that solve big, hairy problems. And so as examples of some of the companies that we've invested in that are focused in that area, Kickstarter is a case of that. It's a brand new capital flow. It's fundamentally collaborative and has exposed us to the idea of crowdfunding, because crowdfunding is a new way of meeting supply and demand. And look at what that turns us into. There's another company called Hampton Creek Foods, and their product is Beyond Eggs. And it's a bean and plant-based set of substrates that biomimic the qualities of processed eggs. So the eggs you never see, the eggs in mayo, the eggs in ice cream, the eggs in cookie dough. And they've been able to do it more cheaply than eggs. And the founder is not a chemist, he's not a molecular biologist, he's not even a scientist. And I'm so excited to be here because I'm a design entrepreneur investor, and I want to give people money. And I think that's a good thing. But I... and I'm on the record about it. But that's how we think about things at Collaborative Fund, because we actually think that that's the best way to drive returns long term. And there is a fundamental challenge in the venture industry, the way that it's structured, whereby we have to be somewhat impatient capital. And there's a lot of food for thought as to how to address that design challenge. But in the context of being impatient capital, social impact investing is what gets me most excited, because I think there's the most alignment there. That's me.
I'm Tara, and I am going to use my slides if I can figure out how to get my slides, because they were beautifully designed by different designers I've been working with. I'm not sure I can figure this out, though. Oh, I think I just did. Just a second. Okay, it should be on. Noah, I think we're good. I think we're good now. Yeah, thank you. So I'm the president of the Goldhirsh Foundation. I was also on the founding team of Good, which was formerly known as a magazine. The artist formerly known as a magazine and is now a media. Then it was formerly known as a media company. Now it's a community platform. So, oops, Casey, are you here? One of the founders of Good is also here, so hope that is kosher. So I'm waiting for my slides to come up, but I am now running the Goldhirsh Foundation. We are based here in Los Angeles, and we fund social innovation. And interestingly enough, just to tie back to David's and Kanyi's remarks, we're actually an investor in Collaborative Fund from our non-grant making, yes, thank you, and from our endowment, which is 95% of what the 95% of foundations funds, and then grants are made from the 5% of foundations funds. And so back to David's comment about all of the money that philanthropy can't shore up the problems, there is an opportunity, a small opportunity, but there is an opportunity for some of foundations funding of that 95% via investing and impact investing, what Kanyi is working on, to help open more of the floodgates for, is this not showing yet? No? To open the floodgates for more funding. One thing I also think is really interesting about the work that we do is we are working with not only private investors, but also governmental entities. Sure? I'm not sure what's going on. No, it's okay. They really are pretty slides. I really want you to see them. So, and I did not really have much to do with them. I just have a really great team. But just really quickly about the Goldhirsh Foundation, we fund sustainability, activation, and opportunity. Opportunity is mostly economic and educational opportunity, mostly in Los Angeles, people with innovative ideas. So for example, we fund a group called LIFT, which is an anti-poverty organization which matches clients who are trying to get out of the cycle of poverty with community volunteers and college students who can help them access different resources they need. With activation, we were one of the very early funders of Kiva and Donors Choose. So we look at platforms and digital tools and media that can activate people and get them involved. And then with sustainability, we work with UCLA on an environmental report card about the report card of Los Angeles environmental range. And one of the most interesting things that we've been doing recently that has been the biggest branded kind of consumer-facing platform or media hit has been an initiative called LA 2050, which came out of the work we were doing at the foundation and realizing that despite the fact that we were going through a strategic plan and trying to figure out how to better do our grant making, we were also hearing in the market that people didn't have a real roadmap for looking at, I'm going to move again. No, it's fine. Oh, good. Looking at the roadmap about what the future of Los Angeles holds. So we commissioned a group to do a report about what indicators are for a healthy community in Los Angeles. They came up with this report. We then issued the report openly, publicly, and got a lot of interesting feedback. And then just this last spring, we had the My LA 2050 Grants Challenge, which was an online crowdsourced grants challenge that some of you may have entered. In fact, Karen, I think you entered, right? Yes, all right. And this was a communal voting process with crowdsourcing. So we had more than 70,000 people participate in voting, and then we awarded $1 million to in $100,000 increments to 10 different organizations. And we did this for for-profits and for nonprofits, which is a little bit unusual. Oh, and I'm so glad. There's my beautiful. That's my homepage minus the little inverted triangle. Yay! Thank you, Noah. So this was done by a great designer who used to work at Good, and we really felt like this was a wonderful way to show our mission and show that we're an active kind of fresh take on philanthropy. And this shows kind of our succession, which you can't see the rest of the page, but shows a succession about what we believe and what our core values are to execute on our mission of social innovation. What I just mentioned, LA 2050, this is a little bit of a snapshot from the LA 2050 report, which I encourage you all to take a look at. It's at la2050.org. And so this is another example, since I did want to get at the design components and the importance of design in communicating a story. There's a lot of really dry data about what the future of Los Angeles looks like and what our current status is. And I think our designers did an amazing job using graphics and colors to really illustrate and bring to life the story of what's happening. So again, I encourage you to take a closer look. We also we've collected over 1,500 citizen visions about what the future of Los Angeles is going to look like. So these are renderings that we've taken from different people, but we've also done things like when Mayor Villaraigosa was leaving office, we put a Snap Yourself photo booth up at his event, at his going away party, and we had people write out their vision of what LA looks like in 2050 and take pictures of themselves. And so we collected all of these visions, and we're coming up with goals for what Los Angeles should look like in 2050 and what people want to aspire to in the future. Public space. This is actually something Lee had discussed. We discussed on the phone about some of the trends that we're seeing and that we saw in our My LA 2050 grants submissions. So we had 279 organizations apply for the $1 million across the board, across the 10 different $100,000 grants. And we saw a lot of people looking at public space differently. And this is something I really feel like designers can play a very active role in. Not only, what we saw was a trend in community involvement in designing public space. So you have a picture of Ciclavia here, and then another picture of 596 Acres, which is a partner organization from one of our grantees, which is looking at vacant lots in Los Angeles and designing a website so people can take pictures and upload ideas and send in ideas about what to do with these vacant lots and sort of take back the space. And again, this is working in collaboration with government and philanthropy, but it really is making individuals designers and also relying on designers to help even come up with these concepts. And then ultimately, we're all here, all of us, about changing behavior and having some pro-social influence on behavior. So these are just depictions of people using public transportation, people beautifying public spaces. And I really see designers playing a very active role in thinking about behavior influences that we all want to have and then how we go about doing that. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for you all. I know we're going to speak more specifically about specific opportunities and other trends we're seeing in the space, but thank you so much for having me.
Hello. Let's see here.
How awesome is his bow tie?
Be jealous. We had matching bow ties, and Lee was sweet enough to let me be the bow tie man. Thank you. Didn't even know me. All right, let's see. Slideshow. I know, I have no excuse. Let's see. Here we go. So, hi, I'm Gabriel Wartofsky. Thank you so much for setting up the word behavior. I wanted to kind of frame my presentation around how my personal experience as a designer has basically been focusing around impacting social and behavioral change in the transportation industry. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Commuter Corporation. We're an electric bike share service provider, which ties in with what Kanyi was talking about sharing. And as a my personal mission as a designer is kind of twofold. First, to impact and change the way that people move around for the better, and secondly, to reacquaint people with the magic of daily movement. So my main inspiration, and something that really affected my behavior as a child and as a designer and who I am today, was, of course, my mother. She was the unofficial bike lady of Washington, D.C. We were a family of biking hippies growing up. She was also a dancer, so she had a profound appreciation of movement and the beauty that movement provides. And she was also a firm believer that magic exists in daily life. So as children, one thing she gave me was the ability to find four-leaf clovers, which she got from her grandfather. So we would ride bikes around as a child, and I just remember one time we got on some nasty little grass patch and found some four-leaf clovers, and she says, "Gabi, there's magic in everyday life. You just have to look for it, and you can't do that in a car." And that really stuck with me. So, of course, for some odd reason, I developed, not having a car, an unhealthy obsession with car design and automobiles. Made it to Art Center, College of Design, and, rebelling. And I found out that, looking back at my projects and halfway through my educational career here, that really, as a designer, what I was interested in is the experiential aspect, designing within intersections of spaces, vehicles, and systems. And that's, I think, what is really interesting about designers and our role in social impact is the ability to design within this fuzzy space of experiential, whether it's hardware or software, it's all design. Our job is to communicate and to better people's lives and make people happy. Personally, that's how I feel. So I worked on a bunch of projects that mainly focused around public transportation, around accommodating people's needs and providing alternative transit for car-centric cities like LA. So I worked with BikeShare, which is one of the premier bike Bike Nation, premier bike share startups in Los Angeles. My thesis project focused around an electric bike, which this is a moment for me. I'm just going to happen. It's right there in front of me. And you guys are more than welcome to ride it later or whenever. Just give me a call. So these were some of my projects, kind of looking at behavioral change with parking, changing automobiles, giving them a function when they're parked to become urban furniture. So it's all kind of meditating around this space of experience and changing it. So my thesis project turned into the company that I work for and co-founded today. It's Commuter, and it's the confluence of two of the fastest growing industries in the transit sector. So talk about behavioral change. These two markets, which are electric bike share and the electric bike itself, are will impact the way that we move around. The electric bike industry is forecast to grow to be one of the largest by 2025, and bike share has been quoted as being the fastest growing transit system in the history of the world. So put those two together and you can change some behavior. The beauty of an electric bike, and I got hate crimed when I was down in South by Southwest because I was riding up a hill and won by bicyclists. It's not really cheating. The main mission is to get people out of cars or provide them with a desirable alternative. Not to get people off of bicycles. So don't hate, it has its purpose. And the purpose has been seen by municipalities that we're working with, corporations and individuals. So how have we changed the behavior? Well, we're working with municipalities, and actually the state of Hawaii has a very ambitious goal. It's the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative to reduce petroleum consumption by 70% by 2030. And we were the one transportation company selected by the government to help them reduce vehicle miles traveled. Now that's twofold, and I wanted to talk about government participation and entrepreneurship. Hawaii is primarily a service-based economy now, and right now they really want to open up the economy to be a clean tech incubator. I mean, you look at these islands, they have every single type of renewable energy. They're perfect for electric bikes and electrical vehicles because there's no range anxiety. And the government basically wants to set up an incubator there that you can develop startups and then scale them, develop scalable models that you can apply to the rest of the world. So it's pretty amazing that we're there. It's also paradise. It's amazing. Corporations as well. I mean, I've heard that corporations are kind of powerful in the world, and we've just completed a pilot with a very influential Silicon Valley-based corporation that's really interested in changing the behavior of the way that their employees commute. So this company, this corporation in particular, about 50% of their employees, which right now is about 6,000 people, live within 5 to 7 miles of their workspace, and they all bring cars. And a huge pain for corporations is parking spaces and dealing with transportation systems around parking. I mean, you can build buildings in place of parking lots. So they're really interested. Our project was doing a pilot, so actually subsidizing electric bikes, paying them, the corporation would buy them, give them to employees, and employees would ride them in place of bringing their cars. And it's a pretty scalable model, and the change that it brings is pretty impactful. And then, of course, down to the individual. It takes an individual to change the world, mostly, and inspire people. So we really wanted, the idea of the bike and the bike share system is to provide a desirable alternative. People in LA especially, it's just too much distance to get to the bus stop or to their work, and they're usually in professional attire, the target that we're reaching. So we designed a grease-free, sweat-free, gender-neutral way to get to your final destination in a presentable fashion and with a smile on your face, because it's very important. You can change people's behavior in two ways, with the carrot or the stick. You can beat them to change, or you can give them a carrot and entice them. And I think as a designer, moving optimism forward, carrots taste better than sticks. So thank you very much. That's my closing slide. Talk later.
Test. Ooh, hello. Everyone say hello to Noah, who's our awesome tech guy who's been helping us out. So I don't even know where to start, because there's nothing normal about any of you. And there are so many things that I think we could dig into here. But what all of you are a part of this real kind of growing social capital market movement around the world, right? And each of you playing a really unique role in that space. What I'd love for you to share a little bit more about is, why do you think there is so much excitement around this idea of sort of leveraging the market, picking up on some of the points that each of you made, but why is it so sexy and exciting right now to look at the market as a power for social change? And what do you sort of see that's driving that?
Well, part of it is to kind of use a wonkish consulting term. We're seeing a forcing mechanism, right? Which is that with all that's going on out there, with the cuts and the financial instability and all of that, we have two choices as a society. One is we say, oh well, that's fine. We'll accept less outcomes. We'll accept more hungry people. We'll accept more violence in our communities. We'll accept more, pollution in our air. Or we can think of, okay, no, that's not acceptable. We still want the outcomes. We still want these healthy, vibrant, just places to live. And so if that's really our choice, then the only option we have is to think about how we can tap into those other markets and move beyond just that, what is ultimately a very, very tiny sliver of the global economic pie. And so I think that the couple things that have happened recently, I think, is there's been a series of regulation changes which have allowed some of these things to actually happen. Because prior to, I'd say maybe about 5 years ago, maybe, that if you were a for-profit corporation, you're legally required to maximize your profit to your shareholders. So when Ben & Jerry's wanted to sell Ben & Jerry's, they had to sell it to Unilever because that was going to maximize the return to the investors. Now there's a whole set of regulations that say that in lieu of maximizing your financial return, if you provide a social return along with that, you can be protected. And so there's a whole series of financial, I think, regulatory issues. And now we're starting to figure out how we can actually provide the return to the social investors from doing work like reducing recidivism, reducing drug and alcohol use with youth, doing all of these things, prenatal care, and that we're actually showing that we can actually produce a financial return to these investors. And so those three confluences, just the cuts that we're seeing, the regulatory environment shifting, and that actually now we're actually being able to create, we've demonstrated some projects where we've actually been able to produce financial return. I think those three things coming together have just really just catapulted this all over the last 5 years. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you see, all right. I'll just support David's comment. David just provided a good kind of backbone, and I think there are also a lot of blurring lines among corporations, nonprofits, and for-profits, and there are strange bedfellows working together, and there are strange tools that, for instance, government is starting to employ. There's a lot in Los Angeles, especially with Mayor Garcetti when he was city council president, a lot of kind of civic engagement tools and reporting tools that he started using. There's a tool called Citizen Investor, which is national in scope, but it's a crowdsourced, crowd-funded platform in which citizens recognize a problem in their communities. They get buy-in by the city, whatever city it may be, that if these citizens put the problem online and get it crowd-funded, the city will implement it. That's a pretty new model. So there are a lot of people who are working together in ways that they never had before, and ways that are being encouraged because the size of these issues is so intractable.
Another thing to layer on, which is a different perspective from these guys, is that I think consumers are actually driving a lot of this, and we're seeing the rise of the social citizen, that just like she made mention of, to use good terminology, people who give a damn. And people who give a damn are increasingly demanding more out of their products and services. And you see that in products that have beautiful visual and graphic design now, in the enterprise, for consumers across the board. It's become a core competency for entrepreneurs. It has to be. But even beyond that, people demand more out of their products and services and want them to actually solve problems. And I think that's part of the underlying trend that's helping other aspects of the sort of structural things change as well.
I think two things came to my mind talking about consumers who want to know a narrative. The top 5 questions for this bike usually revolve not just around range and how much it weighs, but also who makes it, where it's made, what kind of points can they get from their corporation. People care and they want a good narrative and want to know they're doing the right thing, which has been around, but it's especially very, very timely now. And also, Tara and I were talking about the change in new urbanism and everything, and how, as a designer, can we retrofit cities that were designed around automobiles and, thoughts from 50, 60 years ago to modern thinking. People are changing where they live, and how do we take something that already exists and plug some new solutions into it? So I suppose that comes from a very grassroots movement. As a startup, we kind of minimize risk for larger corporations that are interested in our space. We're the pioneers getting all the arrows stuck into us. And so I think social change starts at grassroots, starts small, and then the larger fish come afterwards.
So when we had our call together a week or so ago to plan a little bit for this panel, some of these guys were a little nervous because they're not designers. Like David is a history major. We're not going to hold that against him, but so what I wonder is, I wonder if you can expand a little bit more on, some of you raised this a bit in your comments, but in the audience we have like 60% of the people here that are designers, and I think it would be great to hear a little more about how you see the role of design in what you're doing, or whether implicitly or explicitly, whether it's already there, or whether you see opportunities for leveraging design in your work.
Why don't we start on the other?
As the token designer, I know. I think design so far has proven we've worked in a lot of the incubators that we worked in, and a lot of our investors, we found social impact investors are into us. Other investors are into software solutions, which bring quick returns to money. There's like low overhead and initial costs and everything. So what design has played as a role in our company is it's provided a vision, a larger, bigger picture vision that people can adhere to and connect to, and then we just fill in the dots with bicycles and systems. So I think design, one, is a way to communicate with people. It's an interactive medium. people get it in a very intangible way or they don't. And then also it provides a larger vision that people can relate to, especially in a startup when you're beginning with nothing and all you have is your vision. Design is very important. And then you get all the people to realize the vision, I suppose.
As an investor, who there's two levels of design challenges that I am interested in. One is the design challenge in VC in and of itself, which is how do we create capital flows that are sustainable for society, but that also have the right return criteria. And so people who are being pioneers there and being experimental there and being human-centered there and trying to figure out how to crack the VC nut in and of itself, great. I want to learn from you. I welcome that. That's fantastic. And then within the investment thesis and sort of the portfolio, designers are problem solvers and are human-centered and are optimistic, like we both said, and that makes for very attractive deal flow and makes for very attractive pitches. Whether or not you're a social impact investor, if you can tell a great story about how your company is going to change the world, it's usually a lot of impact and probably, there's often cases where there's the dollar sign next to that as well. And so I can't think of, the vast majority of our entrepreneurs who are doing really well financially have respect for, at the very least, if not a background in design practices. And I think that's an important trend that's capturing the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem.
And I like to think of design, I redefine design for myself, because when I first hear design, my initial thought is graphic design, which is very important in communicating a compelling story and pulling people in. But then I also think about, if I expand out, design is solution seeking, design is strategy. Design is a lot of other things that are not just in this traditional arty design world that a lot of people tend to think of as being design. So one of the things that we've been looking at, and this is from a person who doesn't play video games and doesn't allow video games in the house, I'm really into gaming as a concept for social change. And the people who are making the games are designers. The people who are promoting the games are designers. We do a lot of communal feedback, like I said, with the citizen visions that we collected via photography. That was design thinking going into that. How are we going to collect input from people? Surveys that we do, people who are designing the surveys, that's design. So I think that there's a broad definition of design and ways in which you all can cast your skill set and the values that you bring and the value add that you bring to different projects and to prospective employers. And it's always valuable to be able to frame a narrative or create an icon or graphic that's going to bring someone in, but I think that there's a real methodology to your thinking and about seeking the solution that is really valuable.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo, I think, a lot of what's been said. One of the things that I think there's two levels that I think about, and one is that really the systems level, the high, how can we change the overall system? And I love the concept of the radical problem solving and this ability to look at systems and processes in a way that can say, this process, this system, the way money flows, everything is just fundamentally broken. And how can we just rethink it from a higher strategic systems level thinking and bring some of that design, radical problem solving to it. Then I think also too, though, at the grassroots level is, yes, in many ways it's about that interaction between the corporation, and nonprofits are corporations. They just file a different tax form, that's it. And so they're corporations, they're reaching out to customers. How can we provide that customer experience, that interface, a user interface between how people access our services and reach us? And so I think both helping the individual organizations, whether they're for-profit social enterprises or nonprofits, how they do their work, but also I think most importantly, I think what we're seeing now is this explosion really what I would call systems level thinking, and just radically thinking about whole new ways of funding this work and funding social enterprises and doing all of these things. And I think you're right. It's the other thing we see a lot of is we talk a lot about the subsidy business, as I mentioned earlier, but one of the things is, you can subsidize by providing grants. You can get below market rate capital, right? That's below, not providing a market rate return. Or you can also ultimately pass it on to the end user. So why you pay 5 cents more for fair trade quinoa than regular quinoa is that's providing a subsidy into the system. And so how we think about how we get that subsidy and where it comes from to address these market failures, to be able to provide these solutions to the people in our communities. I think that type of thinking, and it's interesting because at NFF, none of us are finance majors. I mean, we are. The woman who directs my consulting services, she's an arts major, founded a theater company in New York. We have humanities majors. We have all people coming all from these other spaces, but we all share this idea of problem solving. You should see us at lunch. We got Scrabble. We have bananagrams. I mean, it's like we're New York Times crossword puzzle geeks. I mean, it's just like, but it's all about that problem solving. It's all about creativity, and it's all about how do you think about, there's this problem we're here, and how can we apply, kind of outside the box thinking.
So that's a great segue, this question. And before I ask that, the last 10 minutes we have, we want to open up to all of you. So maybe while we're talking about this, if the two mics can get ready so we can get those questions from all you guys. So as David was saying, like the founder of NFF, who I met years and years ago, was an art major. I mean, so that kind of gets into my last question, which is, obviously this event is all about sort of professional pathways for designers, right? And so I wonder if you could give just what would be your one or two sort of bits of advice to the young budding social designers in the audience about how to break into this field. And, as you think about hiring people, I mean, Kanyi already wants to give you guys money. I'm going to try to get you some jobs here. What are the skill sets that you're looking for? So, so they can really be thinking about how to find opportunities in your work.
Oh, sure. Okay. I would say, first of all, just approaching this as what you can bring to the table based on what we or someone else is already doing. Really understand the business and how you might be able to help, because I think we get a lot of inquiries, people who want to work with us, but they haven't actually taken that step to articulate how they could help specifically. So I think being creative about that. And then I also think one of the issues we have had with our designers, with some of our designers, have been follow through, sense of urgency, meeting deadlines, and communicating if you're not going to meet deadlines. And this is just general professional, okay, this is general professional advice, thank you, but it's really important. And so I would just say that. And then the other thing is, what we've just heard about different people's backgrounds. I mean, I have an MBA, one of the women I have on staff has a master's in bioethics. She's basically our designer. She does so much of our graphic design and a lot of our writing and copy editing. Another one worked with pregnant teenage moms. And I think that whatever your background, if you can just chip in and be a real team player and do whatever the heck you're asked to do, whenever and with alacrity, and with a sense of urgency, meeting your deadlines, communicating if you're going to not meet your deadlines, then I think that you're well positioned.
It's real talk.
It is.
One thing that came out of the morning conversation that I was in, which I thought was so good, was that SI on its own, social innovation on its own, is often not enough. Couple it with business, couple it with finance, couple it with international development, with economics. The interdisciplinary designers are lightning powerful unicorns, and so be that. That's the best way to be wildly marketable. And even as is, you're already immersed in such sort of cross-medium thinking, so extend it even further outside of design, and that'll serve you well.
I guess, let's see, in the context of an education at Art Center, I think this school is amazing at teaching you how to learn. And I know the software I learned 6 years ago is already obsolete, but I learned how to learn that software, which will teach me to learn, blah, blah, blah. So I think knowing that not every day you're going to be designing what you want to do. I mean, you're working with a team, so one, social skills. You are living and breathing with these people, so be nice, listen. I mean, really basic things for designers, but sometimes we're in our little bubble. Be very aware of that. And then also just know that your skills are extremely important, and while they literally aren't the skills that you studied and had all your all-nighters learning, it's that same methodology that will keep you moving forward and pivoting in your career. But you guys are really valuable. So just never forget that.
And I'll speak primarily from the nonprofit side. Is don't apply for jobs as designers, because really most nonprofits are going to say that that'd be a nice to have, but we're not going to do that, But the thing is that skill set is still desperately needed. It's just about how we package it and describe it. And I'll just give an example from NFF. This is actually an issue we're currently struggling with. So one of our major initiatives in the state of California is working with domestic violence providers. There's about 120 domestic violence providers in the state of California. We've worked with 54 of them, right? So we're trying to figure out how to tell that story. All that data, 5 years of working with dozens and dozens of domestic violence providers across the state, financial data, human stories, all this impact, great, but we're not. So what we do is then we send it to our marketing people, right, and say, hey, communicate. And what we've been finding is how we can gather all that information of all the ground results, all these on-ground stories, and be able to communicate them out, not just to funders or others, but actually to say, hey, this is what's going on in the sector. This is what's going on in the state. This is what's going on in this field. This is what we need to do to change and to do this. To be able to capture that, to say, I can take that work you're doing on the ground and convert it into how we communicate to the field to drive social change, to drive systems change. If you can explain yourself as doing that role, I think that's incredible. But I think if you come in as saying, oh, I'm going to do design, they're going to think, okay, yeah, you're going to design around your report. Yay, great. I think that it's just a way of reframing how you think about and talk about yourself, which you may already do, but I definitely think that as you work with nonprofit organizations, it's a critical distinction.
Great. Okay, guys, so we have a little bit of time. So very little bit of time. Mariana is giving me the stare. So does anybody have a really burning, hot, amazing question that they'd like to ask? I see one back there. Remember to ask Kanyi for money, because he already said he'd give it to you.
Okay, well, I definitely want money.
You got your first customer.
So I think a few of you mentioned the idea of social impact bonds and how you can have a really big impact in the future. Do any of you know of other models, aside from that are allowing capital markets to engage in social impact work in a way that really provides them financial gain and so they can justify it? Are there other things? Like social impact bonds are one of the only things I've really heard about. Are there others out there?
I know we got to wait. Yeah, 20 seconds I thought we had. All right. There's a website called payforsuccess.org. So in the social impact bond is actually a term that came out of the UK. In the US, the term is more around what they call pay for success, which includes, so that's a great website. It captures a lot of, it's being funded by Rockefeller Foundation. It captures a lot of the projects that are going on around the United States. It's kind of a clearinghouse. So payforsuccess.org. The other group is the social capital markets group. I was going to say, did I steal your thunder there? I was like, okay. So the social capital markets, they're the other, I would say, the big player in this space. Where a lot they're based here in California, San Francisco. So they would be two great sources of information. I don't know if other folks.
So one general thought which I've noticed, which Tara alluded to, is that the wall between PRIs, which is program-related investing, the actual work that foundations intend to do, and then fund management is becoming more of a membrane, and there's a lot more communication there whereby you can get an investment from a foundation, and that's happening more, and so keep an eye out for that and even ask for it.
And I just thought of one last thing. There's a group called No Right Brain Left Behind, which I believe was started in Los Angeles by designers. Why am I laughing? Oh, why? What? I don't know. I don't know why everyone's laughing. What?
I think they enjoyed that.
Like the name. I was like, did they just speak right before us and I didn't know? I thought, does everyone hate them? Tell me. Yeah, it's a great name. And that really rattled me. I didn't know what to think about that. I thought, is he right behind me naked or what? I mean, what's going on? But they're a group formed by a group of designers to apply design concepts to social market problems. And so what they're doing is they're bringing their skill set to help revolutionize nonprofits. So very quick example, there's a project called the Salamander Project out of Locke High School, which is redesigning the library to become a hacker space because no one uses the library, which breaks my heart. But so No Right Brain Left Behind came up with this idea of let's make this a hacker space so kids will actually use it, so kids will get real skills for 21st century learning, and so people will want to engage in this educational activity. So check out No Right Brain Left Behind.
Any more before we all get naked? We can take one more question. I cannot see anybody. Is there one last burning question? No? Going once? Going twice? Okay, I just want to give a huge round of applause for this amazing group of people. So none of you have excuses to get into revolutionizing the marketplace. We've already heard that you as designers can play a role. I think what's happening now is buses, right? Yes. Over to Jennifer.
Uh-oh. The podium mic is on. Okay. So up next for LEAP Symposium participants, we are continuing our emergent topics in new locations. We're moving down to South Campus. So there are shuttles in front of the main entrance where the shuttle dropped you off. There's only one out there right now, but we have 3 more on standby in the student lot so we can get everyone down in one big run. So to go over your locations, Group 1, Value and Communication with Liz. You are going to be in South Campus, rooms M3, M4, and M50. We have handouts of this, so don't feel stressed. Our volunteers will be in the lobby with handouts of all the locations. Group 2, Collaborations and Partnerships. You are staying here in Hillside Campus.
So that's my group, and Robert, we're gonna walk everybody over back to the Films Downstage where we just were. We've got a shortcut for you guys. So please don't get on the shuttle, stay with us, and we'll all take shuttles over at 3:15, only if you're in my group. Thank you.
Only Penny's group, stay Hillside. Group 3, Networks, and Group 5, Access, which I believe combined this morning. You are heading down to South Campus with Mariana and Jocelyn, and you will be in South Campus rooms 231, 232, and 233. And Group 4, Social Impact Design Education with Alan and Lee, you will be in the South Campus Net Lab. When you arrive at South Campus, there will be people to guide you, and we look forward to seeing you down there.
And the soundstage people, do come down later. There's ice cream truck.
Thank you.